dynasty, but well-groomed. That's a good look. If I ever did that, that's the look I would go for.
The other guy is a guy who takes no prisoners when it comes to sports.
Let's stomp these dudes.
Together, they bring you the best in Oklahoma State sports talk and opinions on sports from around the country.
That's right. Listen up. Hey, listen up. You.
It's Jason Elmquist.
Today, I'm a mild-mannered reporter for the newspaper.
And Patrick Wheeler.
I'm a very dangerous man.
This is the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
That's what I'm talking about. Sport.
You ain't never heard nothing like this. Let me work. Show me where the mic is. I'm on stage, black shirt and my Timbs. You know how I do it. I ain't playing with you. I've been grinding. Anybody trying to sleep on me, better do something with your eyelids. I hear a lot of whining, but I don't hear a lot of rhyming. Whoa. Everybody got opinions. Let it go into my ear, then I block that. Put me on stage, I'ma rock that. Saying you the best. Stop that, phony. I am not that. Yeah. What are y'all doing out here? What are y'all doing out here? Maybe you should spend a little less time with the women on your arms and a little bit more with your career. I ain't saying I'm the best, but I should be in the top 10. Give me a list of names. I'm a top them. I'm just playing with you. I don't care what.
It's the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Busting open a new week here. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist hanging out today, and I hope the audience, the listeners, love to hear football talk, because that is what we are doing today. Recapping Saturday's eventful victory for Oklahoma State, as well as breaking down some of the crazy action in the NFL yesterday. Jason, I think eventful is the right way to put it for Oklahoma State, because there was plenty that went on there. But first, before we break anything down, it was what? Give me your initial reaction when Spencer Sanders was out for the game. What was the thought there after the first quarter? He's gone. Was it because I'll tell you what mine was? It was, uh-oh. And it was just straight up like I didn't know. I thought that if anything could unravel OSU's Week 1 plans, it was that right there.
You know, I was holding out to evaluate because of the fact that, you know, we've seen at Oklahoma State, we've seen across the Big 12. I mean, you go back to when Brock Purdy was pulled in due to an injury for Iowa State. You know, we saw him flourish. So I didn't know. Again, the thing is, we didn't get the opportunity to watch practices this fall like we normally would because of the pandemic and whatnot. So a lot of things were kind of just closed off to us. So I had no idea what to expect with either of the quarterbacks that might have come in. Again, we still didn't know leading up to game day. If you remember right, I actually asked heading into the original first week of the season that who the backup was, and we got a response of, or I guess it was 2 weeks back. It was we'll find out by this time next week. And then we never got a response. And now we find out the reason that we never got a response is because, one of the guys was in COVID contact tracing, so he wasn't able to practice.
Yeah, and it was I had said it earlier. I think I even said it on our pregame stuff that the only thing really that could hurt Oklahoma State in the long run would be if anyone in the trio gets hurt again this year. If there's any sustained injuries amongst the big three on the offensive side, was truly worried about how Oklahoma State could respond with that. But even worse to me when it came down to the quarterback spot. Now, initially, I felt really bad for Spencer Sanders finally getting back and barely getting any time out there before it all went back to where he was with an injury. Now, we hear today that Mike Gundy says he'll be in a boot until tomorrow. He's going to try and go on Wednesday, and we're not sure if he'll be able to start Saturday or not. I think that I will say I'm worried about his ability to stay healthy a little bit at this point.
Yeah.
Because and a high ankle injury, that's something that is nagging. It's not usually a quick fix, and I know he wants to be out there. I know he, especially with the start of Big 12 play. But I just worry for a guy like this at the position he's at, that if he can't stay healthy, he may never actually get a chance to display his full skill set.
Well, and that's the tough thing that the coaching staff's going to have to face as well, is because of the carousel on the offensive line, the struggles that they had in that game on Saturday, is you don't want to put Spencer Sanders back in there, if he's not 100% healthy, because that running ability is relied upon because of the struggles on the offensive line. But at the same time, you worry, and again, Gundy didn't commit to who would be the starter if Sanders went out. Obviously, I think as long as he's practicing, it should be Shane Illingworth. Clearly, that was what was shown on Saturday. But even then, Illingworth's not – I mean, he's a pure pocket passer. But I think the big thing, the difference between him and Bullock that I saw, was he was willing to chuck it deep. And that's what Oklahoma State has wanted and demanded from their quarterback for the past, 10 years. So that's what gives him the advantage. Again, I'm sure when, teams have maybe have a little more preparation, knowing that, hey, we don't have to worry about him tucking and run like we did with Spencer Sanders. They can put more pressure on the young quarterback. Maybe that changes how he's been playing. But the thing is, with the struggles on that offensive line, it's really a damned if you do, damned if you don't with either of the quarterbacks right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of ups and downs with both, but I think you make a good point with Spencer too. Is if he could rely, and if he could rely himself on sitting in that pocket consistently all game long and not worrying about needing to make plays with his legs, which, you're just going to have to. And Spencer is one of those guys that is comfortable doing that. That takes away a solid chunk of what his game plan is. Yeah, you can't throw him out there until he's absolutely 100% and looks mobile, like you said, especially with that offensive line. But I'm with you. I don't know how you can go away from Illingworth at this point. I know it was a small sample size, but he looked really confident out there from the get-go. And that's something that Bullock didn't look like.
And not just, it wasn't just that he looked confident, which he did, but the offense responded to him.
Yeah, they did.
You saw, because that's the thing in my column for the news press, I mentioned that if you go back and watch the last pass from Bullock, honestly, it wasn't completely Bullock's fault. It was Tylan Wallace's fault, to be honest, and it's because he was getting frustrated. If you go back and watch that play, he didn't turn to watch for a pass because he was getting frustrated with the defense because they weren't, trying to, use his ability of going up against, defenders and getting those defensive pass interference, which we did eventually see on Saturday, and you instantly saw them go to the well of Tylan Wallace when you bring in Shane Illingworth, and instantly it just shifted the mentality of that entire offense. And I think it was capped off when you look at, if you were watching the game and if you really noticed on that scoring drive, on Illingworth's first drive, obviously you have the two big passes to Wallace, but a touchdown score by Chuba Hubbard. Most instances, players, offensive linemen are running to the running back, celebrating and whatnot. Half of the offensive line turned to celebrate with Illingworth. So that, to me, instantly showed that they had more confidence and it just felt better with him at quarterback than Ethan Bullock.
Yeah, and like you said, you could see it immediately, and that was definitely the difference. I'm glad you brought up Bullock's his interception. I remember when I watched that play live and immediately thought, just looking at it from the naked eye standpoint, wow, that was a bad throw. Like, that was just a bad decision. Yeah. Then they slowed it down a little bit, and it's kind of like you said. You could see Tylan wasn't really ready for it. He might have even moved in the wrong direction for that pass. Now, I don't know I think there was blame on both sides, but it looked bad at the time. And then he goes 8 for 13, 41 yards, that interception, took 4 sacks. But part of that, I know the offensive line was shaky at best. But at the same time, I saw watching Ethan, it was a lot of not being able to get rid of the ball when he probably should have, waiting too long and holding it, and that's something that you can't have right now.
Well, and one of the things I noted as well, again, and that's the crazy thing, Bullock is, has a couple of years of junior college football. Illingworth is a true freshman. He's coming straight at a high school level. So you would assume, based on, playing at a slightly higher level, Bullock would be able to make smart plays. Like the one thing that stuck out to me, I tweeted out about it on Saturday, is there were 2 instances in which Bullock is scrambling towards the sideline. Instead of chucking it out of bounds for, to call the play dead, he runs out of bounds for like a 5-yard loss each time.
Yeah.
And then the one instance that Illingworth is faced with a similar situation, he throws it out of bounds smartly, not taking that 5-yard loss. And at that point, I'm like, okay, that alone shows how much mature as a quarterback that Illingworth is, in my mind, than to Bullock, because you got to know, especially with how the offense had been struggling, that you can't take effectively a sack by just running out of bounds.
Yeah, there's times where it takes more effort than it probably should to teach a quarterback to go ahead and live for the next down, right? I mean, you can give it up on a play out of bounds and just live to see another down. That's tough for some quarterbacks to grasp because they want to make something happen every play. Mike Gundy said today that they didn't really limit anything when their backups came in, when Bullock and Illingworth came in terms of the playbook. Did you buy that?
Yeah, I do, because I think Sanders or Casey Dunn, I believe, said that on Saturday as well. And that's the thing. I mean, if you look at it, they weren't. You had the halfback screen that they tried with Bullock, which that play alone encompassed how bad the blocking was from the offensive line for me in that game. Because if you go back and watch it, there were 3 people ahead of Chuba. One guy that they had to block, and none of the 3 could block him, and ended up tripping him basically behind the line of scrimmage. And again, people will question the play call, but if 1 or 2 or all 3 of those guys block, there's a good chance that Chuba goes off for a touchdown on that one. So I think there's certainly, I don't think they necessarily scaled back. Obviously with Bullock, it looked like they still tried to utilize quarterback run. Maybe you took that out when you went with Shane. You didn't really see them try to run it as much with the quarterback then. But no, I don't think they necessarily scaled back the offensive scheme.
Yeah, I don't know. When he said that initially, I kind of thought to myself, I don't know if I believe that 100%. There seemed, and the reason I say that is not for Illingworth, mainly for Bullock. There were enough times when he was out there where it seemed like this mixture of he didn't want to go downfield enough, as well as maybe they weren't letting him go downfield enough. There was this little, kind of mixture of it. I thought to myself, I wonder how many plays he's actually getting drawn up to take the occasional shot here. I was happy to see him at least, like you hit on there, get it to Tylen pretty quickly and at least try to get him involved. There was one point throughout that first quarter and the second quarter just staying on the sideline. I was sitting there wondering myself, is he right? I feel like that at that point, I even asked, I was like, what in the world is going on with Tylen not being in the game, and were they, just limiting his reps and all that, trying to work him back in? But at that point, you needed your playmaker out there, and eventually he got into a couple of really good balls and made a couple of really nice plays. Obviously, no one's surprised there on the couple of catches he had. But that's something that going into this week, whoever's at quarterback, they'll put all 3 of them out there and say, look, I know the defense was pesky at times last week, but guess what? We're about to get into Big 12 play where it's going to be a lot tougher, and we have to immediately start looking Tylen's way and get him more touches, because we've seen, and I know everybody knows this by now, but he's one of those rare talents. This doesn't happen to every wideout. This is one of those rare talents you can just throw it up, and you have a pretty good shot at him coming down with the ball.
And again, I think that's where the frustration was getting with him. It wasn't. I'm sure.
I agree.
It wasn't necessarily just the defense, with the bump coverage. He's used to that. He saw that in the Tulsa game last year. It was well documented. I think it was like 3 defensive pass interference on them, just saying, you know what?
Yeah.
We'll take the 15 yards instead of giving up a big 30-yard pass to Tylen Wallace. But it was the fact that Ethan Bullock was unwilling to throw the ball. I mean, again, you mentioned 4 sacks, and several of them is just he again, with the very first 3 and out that they had on that drive with him, he was sacked on a 3-man rush. And again, part of the problem was it was a shady offensive line play, But at the same time, if 3 men are rushing you, you have to be able to move around the pocket. You have to be able to get the ball out and find time to create. Allow your wide receivers to create time, because obviously there's essentially 8 men that are back there, and he just took a sack with 3-man rush. And again, I think it's a combination of things, but he was unwilling to throw the ball, and Tylan Wallace was clearly frustrated by that specifically, I think.
Yeah, and that didn't help what I already thought was a low confidence level. You got to go out there, and it's crazy how different you can tell body language, just how different it was with Bullock and Illingworth. And maybe that part of it is Illingworth got to see 2 quarterbacks go before him, and he might have thought to himself, there's no way I can do worse than what's happened today. And he went out there and made something happen, again, in a small sample size, but it was enough to get it done. But I think that's one of the biggest things that when West Virginia looks at film here, when everybody else looks at film, and especially West Virginia, because if they for some reason end up having to face Bullock, let's say he gets the start, they're going to look at that initially and say, look how he came onto the field here. He didn't look like this was a guy that was ready to go. And I'm not saying that he's like this really bad. I don't think he's this crazy bad quarterback or anything like that. But I'm sorry, if you're the quarterback at Oklahoma State University, you got to go out there and act like you've been there before and make plays.
And I think that's what was most impressive for me, is that Shane Illingworth came in and, again, only had essentially a quarter to work with, quarter and some change, and was doing so with having not gotten to practice for the past 2 weeks. So he, again, maybe he didn't have a feel for all of the plays and all the routes that his guys are supposed to run and stuff like that. And maybe they condensed it down in a sense of, hey, just focuses on this side of the field, like we talked about that they did with Sanders last year. But it was a case where, again, he had not been practicing for the past 2 weeks, and it goes back to what he had done before that and how much he had learned before then, because according to Casey Dunn on Saturday, up until him having to be sidelined due to contact tracing, he said they were neck and neck with Bullock.
Yeah.
And so, that's what I'm most impressed with him, is not only coming in and leading him to that win on Saturday, but having done it without even getting to practice for the past 2 weeks.
When we come back, we'll break down more of the offensive side for Oklahoma State, even though the numbers weren't huge. There were some positives. We'll take away from that. The defense was really the story in Week 1, and, of course, we'll talk about more of that coming up, as well as hear from head coach Mike Gundy. And hour number 2, we'll get into some NFL, all still to come in the afternoon sports drive. The afternoon sports drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. 1020 AM, 1580 AM, 93.1, 93.3, and 105.1 FM. TriplePlaySportsRadio.com, Triple Play Sports Radio app. Tons of ways to listen. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist here with you on Monday, breaking down OSU's Week 1 victory over Tulsa, which had plenty of positives and negatives. I mean, obviously the score is... Jason, one thing that went wrong for a lot of people was anyone that put money on this game. It was unless you were trying to do a prop bet, possibly, it was probably not a good day for you putting money down on this ball game. I think that was the case for a lot of other college games as well, but that was one thing I thought of. I'll say this, with Oklahoma State's defense, like, we know they dominated. And that was somewhat of the expectation coming in this year with 10 out of 11 starters back, especially against Tulsa. I will say this, though, and I thought they looked really, really good. But I believe they were somewhat fortunate. The whole team was fortunate that Tulsa, their offense wasn't all that explosive. And I say that, too, with, you go into the game a little bit before kickoff, you find out Shamari Brooks has torn his ACL in practice that week and isn't going to be a part of the offense, obviously, and so that helps. But I think we're going to have to ask for that type of performance from the OSU defense obviously the rest of the way with the Big 12, and maybe even more so because there's not going to be a lot of times that you only allow 7 points in the Big 12.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, I think it was slightly a benefit for Oklahoma State, the issues that Tulsa had. Obviously, you lose, you find out that Shamari Brooks is out. We found out post game as well that Zach Smith had basically only come back to practice. I think it was either early this week or late last week, because he was also having, I don't know if it was COVID or COVID contact tracing. So they certainly benefited from a less than the normal explosive Tulsa team. Again, they weren't that explosive last year either, but at least they were able to run the ball last year. Again, without Shamari, that was kind of limited. But yeah, again, I think it's promising. We talked about it in our in the tailgate show beforehand, the experience that they have on defense, and I think that kind of showed up when you saw Tanner McAllister just going vertical, horizontal goes horizontal with the ground to make a play, really to keep it alive in the end. Obviously, Colby Harvell-Pill working on his 5+ with possibly as I tweeted out, one of the easiest ones. I know it's not the easiest one because he had one last year. I want to say it was against West Virginia or KU. Where it was literally just a fly ball to center field. The only issue he had was not thinking too much when trying to catch that one.
Yeah, I will, and year. I will have you know that if you remember on Friday, I took the Saturday, I took the over. Right. On him getting over 5 interceptions. He's already on his way. He's on his way.
Yeah, and again, all it took was one of the easiest ones he's ever going to get in his career. But yeah, no, I think I would have liked to have seen more pressure. Obviously, again, I think Zach Smith's experience certainly helped that as well, except there at the end. I mean, I was amazed that there wasn't a timeout or a play call, or I guess, they still had one timeout left on that fourth down play. Because everyone saw it. Everyone saw OSU's blitzing. You know it's coming, and nothing was changed. And Malcolm Rodriguez just literally ran straight through a gap that would have been great for a running back, but instead he was a linebacker and just smoked Zach Smith. But I'd like to see more pressure on the quarterback from Oklahoma State in the Big 12, because they're going to be more explosive offenses, better wide receivers that you're going to have to prevent quarterbacks from getting the ball to.
Yeah, Malcolm, 1 sack, obviously the one you just talked about, 2 tackles for loss, 9 solo tackles in that game. Led the way. He had 2 quarterback hits. All in all, there were 5 quarterback hits. So, yeah, that's what you want to see more of coming into Big 12 play. I think Zach Smith has some serious talent there, but at the same time, I mean, there's also a lot better quarterbacks that they're going to see than him. He made one really good throw in that ball game that looked like an NFL caliber throw. Other than that, but at the same time, Trey Sterling played pretty well, and that defense again is expected. Tanner McAllister, as you said, had a game. It was fun to watch him. I thought it was also encouraging to see Rodarius Williams in on a couple of important plays. He had an important pass breakup and a couple of tackles, so it was good to see him back out there as well for OSU's defense. They didn't really have, and you got to give them credit. I mean, with the time they were out there on the field, you're looking at, if you're on the defensive side of the ball, you're looking at what's happening with your offense. Your starting quarterback goes out. Chuba's getting stuffed. There's not a lot going on. Tylen is on the sideline, and that's easy for that defense. They could have been like, well, what do we do here? I mean, we're doing everything we can. But they went out there every single time they had to, stood tall till the very end, and looked real. I think that was as encouraging as ever. Third downs, they made sure that was basically out the door for Tulsa. Fourth downs too, and that's what you want to see. If you can start things off with your defense and then work everyone back in, because your talent is so good on the offensive side of the ball, you know you're going to work that back in eventually here. I think that's something you can build off of right there.
Yeah, and again, I think Forcing more turnovers is going to be big. Obviously, you got one, but it was at the end of the game, and ultimately was still needed to clinch it at the end. But again, forcing turnovers is going to be important. Creating havoc in the backfield, and again, I think the next 2 weeks, West Virginia, Kansas, you might be able to get away with not getting as much pressure on the quarterback as you did against Tulsa. Remains to be seen with West Virginia. Obviously, they had a good week 1, but they also had a terrible opponent.
Yeah.
Kansas, again, another team that you shouldn't have to worry about. But you've got to. These next 2 weeks are ones where you need to start figuring out. Okay, how can we dial up pressure? How can we create turnovers? Create havoc more, because this thing is like, I mean, there were a couple times that Tulsa was driving and it was almost a bend but don't break. Obviously, we got to keep in mind that they got lucky with that missed field goal by Tulsa as well in a close game.
How about that? 26 yards.
Yeah,
and it was missed. I couldn't. When I sat there and saw that, that's when I said to myself, okay, Tulsa doesn't deserve some type of upset. I mean, that right there. Anyone could have made that field goal. I mean, come on now.
Yeah. Again, I mean, we've seen crazier things happen. But again, for the Oklahoma State defense, again, they had obviously great play. I know a lot of people say they won the game. I would argue that they kept the game winnable, because if you keep in mind when Shane Illingworth took over, Oklahoma State was losing. I mean, they were actually down 7-3. The defense had, while it had only given up 7, it was still more than their offense had been able to put up.
As far as before everything started going downhill for the offense, the Spencer Sanders, there were a couple plays I thought he looked good on the run, throwing the ball a couple of times on the run, somewhat mobile. I mean, not crazy, like, oh my gosh, this dude is making big time plays on the ground, but somewhat encouraging to at least see him be able to do that. I know you and I predicted he would take a big shot downfield early to get Tylen involved. As we said, that obviously wasn't the case. And when he was trying to get the run game involved too, obviously, which we know that has to be a big part of OSU's offense. I thought early on in that first drive, they get down near the goal line, it's 3rd and 4, and Spencer, he hands it off to Chuba. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, what are we doing on 3rd and 4 there? I know you have Chuba Hubbard, but then you can tell immediately after Spencer was just in pain. Like he was doing all he could to get off of that field. And so I understood at that time, okay, this is not good. We better be able to have something to back up at the quarterback position or we're in trouble. The other thing that kind of got me early was the sloppy handoff that resulted in the fumble with Spencer and Chuba. Yeah. It was tough. Yeah. I mean, that's a bad turnover. Like there's never a good turnover.
Yeah.
But there are some that are way worse than others, and that's the exact same thing, if I recall, that happened back in the game against Tulsa last year. So there's when you look at things that we gotta, like, if you're OSU and you're looking at things this week, one thing you circle right there, and Chuba, you can go down the line because he had 90 plus yards in the score, but you can go down if you're pointing to him and say, okay, here's 2 things you got to work on. If I'm telling Chuba, here's 2 things you got to work on. It's 1, I know that handoff wasn't all his fault, but you got to make sure you got that ball in your breadbasket. 2, Chuba's got to be better at pass blocking. He just has to, and that's for his own benefit for the next level, because the NFL, they love what they see out of him as a runner. They want to see more of him in the pass game, and they want to see if he can pass block. What was the first thing that Eric Bieniemy said to Clyde Edwards-Helaire this year? Yeah. You better be able to pass block or you're not going to play. Chuba's got to work on that too.
Yeah, and I'm going to give him a pass on the fumble on the handoff, because that's a timing play and it was totally disrupted by the high snap. You take the high snap in. Yeah, if the high snap wasn't there and there was the fumble on the exchange, then yes, I can argue at both Sanders and Hubbard. But, the timing was totally disrupted by Sanders having to sky for a ball so it doesn't go flying over his head, and then trying to, it's one of those where, you almost wonder, should Spencer, again, if he were healthy, might have taken a different approach and just taken it and run himself because he knew that the timing was disrupted by that high of a snap. So yeah, I don't necessarily blame it on them. Reichschneider, again, he's started, about 12 games so far in his Oklahoma State career. He's got to be better on that because we saw one at the end of the game with Shane Illingworth in there, where Shane Illingworth almost, lost his head because of a high snap as well, and so it disrupted the play, and he ended up having to scramble out of the pocket because of the craziness. So that's something that, in my mind, needs to be worked on as well as just the offensive line really as a whole, but obviously the snaps as well.
And there are going to be people that looking in, they're like, hey, there's plenty to take away from this in a good light, which there is. But we got to remember, OSU was a 23-point favorite here. I mean, this was supposed to be blowout city, and I think we even said that multiple times that by halftime it shouldn't have been a contest. So there's things that we have to break down and look in that way. So when we come back, we'll finish up with talking about a couple of players that we really liked things out of this week. There's a number of them, as well as I'm going to give Jason my main reason for why Tulsa couldn't pull this off when they had chance after chance after chance. We'll talk about all that to round out hour number 1 of the afternoon sports drive next.
Been a too long time with no peace of mind. I'm ready for the times to get better. I've got to tell you, I've been racking my brain, hoping to find a way out.
Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network, Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist. As we wrap up hour number 1, finishing up Oklahoma State football talk here. Jason, after our early morning adventure there on the game day, was it immediate quick pregame nap for you, or did you have to wait till later?
I tried to take a nap, but I was only going to get about a 20-minute window, and my brain's just like, okay, I need to do this. So I'm just like, all right, I got to get ready. But no, it was a post-game nap that I got in before typing up my column, because as I was telling Jimmy Gillespie up at the game, I'm like, I couldn't write a column right now. Like, I know what I want to write, but my brain is shot. Well, and then the funny thing as well is I get home from the game, and I only have about a short window, about an hour to try to get a nap in, because a national sports radio station wanted to have me on to talk about the game and whatnot, and that was, they text me before the game, and so when Spencer goes down, I'm like, man, I'm definitely gonna have a lot to talk about on that show.
Yeah, no, there was a lot more, I'm sure, that a lot of people had expected to, including us, to talk about here after week 1. This was going to be one of those I fully expected. Yeah, Oklahoma State dominated this side of the ball, win here, win there, and it was no contest. But plenty more to break down, obviously, than that. And I'll tell you one player who I really thought stepped up big time and probably earned himself some more playing time in the same way, too, in the same time, and that's LD Brown. I thought he played with he was running with a purpose. I think he really established himself in this ball game. What I got was, I kind of got that whole, with Chuba and him, that whole Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray kind of vibe going on there. That you've got a guy like LD Brown who can spell Chuba, but it's not just a guy who you put in there literally to give Chuba a break every now and again. He's going to get you some yards when he runs the ball too. He ran hard. He had a big touchdown called back. But I thought he ran about as good as I've seen.
Yeah, and Gundy obviously said, I think both Saturday and then again today, that the way he played Saturday will allow him opportunity for more touches and stuff like that. And obviously, that would help for, the keeping healthy Chuba Hubbard. But I'll also keep in mind that I want to see back-to-back games of something like this from him, because for people who remember last year, he would have a game like this where, like, man, this is going to be a good change of pace type of back, and then the next week he gets 10 carries for 5 yards. So my thing is, I want to see consistency out of him. Again, this is now off the top of my head only the second time I've seen a game in the past 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, where I've seen him and say, okay, this is a back that can spell Chuba Hubbard. Where there were plenty more games where I'm like, okay, I understand why you're giving the ball to Chuba 30 times out of the backfield.
Yeah, it helps out so much. I mean, when you have a guy as talented as Chuba, who no one sees any issue with him, getting him 30 to 35 touches in a game. Well, even the best backs, and you see it at every single level, need that breather every now and again. We've seen multiple times in the NFL where they'll bring in guys to get their starting and their stud running backs ready for the late part of the game in the fourth quarter or so, and that's what LD Brown can provide if he does stay consistent with what he did on Saturday, which looked really, really good. It's important, and look, I think it allows the offense to do a lot more too. I mean, you're telling your guys that, hey, we can run different sets here. We can run split backs if we need to. I think there's a lot of different ways you can use LD Brown, again, if he stays consistent. As far as Tulsa, look, they came into this and that they can only be so confident, okay? I mean, I know, and we talked to a lot of people leading up to the game. There's always in a matchup like this that one glimmer of hope where like, something may happen, but we pretty much know what will probably take place here. I know last year we started off okay, but we all saw what happened. Well, that was pretty much the expectation here again for pretty much everybody I talked to that was involved with Tulsa football before. But when they come in and get as many chances, and that's just things that they can't even control, right? It's Spencer Sanders getting hurt. That's the first one. They're like, okay, well, that probably helps, right? And then stopping Chuba a little bit. They're like, okay, we keep that up. We might be able to make something happen here. They keep going down the list of things that fell their way. It's been a while since I've seen a team shoot themselves in the foot as many times as Tulsa did with all the chances they had. And that really stems back to the absurd amount of penalties they had in this ballgame. 15 penalties for 120 yards. You're not going to win many ball games doing that.
Yeah, and a lot of it late was time management.
Yeah, exactly.
Delay of games.
Yeah, exactly right. Unbelievable.
It baffled me in the first half when they call a timeout to avoid a delay of game, and then delay a game out of the timeout.
Exactly.
Like at that point, because I know a lot of OSU fans went with, I tweeted out in a poll early in the third quarter. I was like, okay, which is more dysfunctional right now? The electric whistles, which we need to talk about today as well.
Oh my goodness.
The OSU offense or Tulsa's time management, and obviously OSU fans at the time were dogging on the offense, but to me, as much as you want to talk about the defense, and Shane Illingworth being factors in this game, the time management from Tulsa was atrocious.
Oh, so
and
bad.
It was definitely played an impact in this game.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was, and that's something you prep for. Like, you prep for being able to manage, the clock, but my goodness, that many times. And a lot of that falls on the coaching staff too. Like, come on. That's something that cannot happen at any level. And yeah, you're right. Whenever that sequence occurred after the timeout, you were just like, at that point, okay, Tulsa, they don't deserve to win here at this point with what they've been doing with penalties. Yeah, we'll get to those electric whistles. But first, this is what Coach Mike Gundy had to say immediately following the win over Tulsa on Saturday.
Well, I was proud of our team. We got put in a unique situation there for a while. Had to regroup, particularly on offense. Defense was fabulous. 0 of 11 on third down and 1 of 4 on fourth down is really the story of the game. So played well enough late to rally, get the guys the football that we needed to get to score points. I'm thrilled with the guys for fighting through all the adversity and finding a way to win the game at the end.
Yeah, that's something right there that I think stands out is you ask a lot of any program to, especially in times where they're facing heavy adversity. And a lot of chips were falling in the wrong way for Oklahoma State. A lot of different times. And yet they found a way, and I think that's something you want to see out of your team early. You may not expect it that way, but if they show that they're going to grit and grind a victory out of it, which is exactly what they did, then that's what you take that and you look at the end of the season and you say, remember how we started this off against Tulsa? We had every single thing going against us. We had everybody out there thinking this was it. And then guess what? We found a way to get it done. And you look back on this the rest of the season and say, where's that grit and grind? Let's find it again. Let's get to it. And I think that plays a big part in it. It's a precursor for what could happen the rest of this year.
Well, and Chuba made the best line in the post game, saying that one game doesn't define a season.
No, it doesn't.
And that's true. I mean, that's the important thing is you got the win. The important thing is the fact that if you're wanting to make the college football playoffs, you had to win this game.
Oh, yeah.
And you found a way to do that, even though your starting quarterback went down with injury. And that's the thing is that actually, as crazy as this may sound, may benefit Oklahoma State if they're able to continue to win when it comes to college football playoff. They can look and say, man, even with their third string backup, they were able to scratch and claw out a win that they probably shouldn't have gotten.
Yeah, and that's so true what you was saying, because also, isn't it easy? Wouldn't it be easy, I should say, in this situation for a lot of outsiders looking in to say, if they had lost, that could have defined their season right there. Or even the fact that they did come back and win, there's still going to be people that think that is how their season might go. If they can only score that many points against Tulsa, you've already heard it, you know how it is. But isn't it easy for people to think that? I think it's important that Chuba points that out. And then that's the thing. You get even if Spencer isn't 100% healthy, which I doubt he will be for Saturday, but even if he isn't, and you have to go with Shane, well, there's plenty of confidence in that guy right now. There's so much that Oklahoma State is going to still be able to build off from this game. And I know West Virginia is a good football team, but if I'm West Virginia, I'm thinking to myself, look, this Oklahoma State squad has a lot to come out and prove that, hey, that was a fluke against Tulsa. That's not who we are. We want to live up to the hype of a lot of people putting us in the college football playoff, and they're going to have a ton to prove going out there against West Virginia. If I'm the Mountaineers, I'm thinking to myself, we're going to watch out this week.
Yeah, and if I'm West Virginia, after seeing what happened in that game, I'm taking the approach of I'm blitzing. I'm putting as much pressure because of the struggles of that offensive line. If it's Spencer Sanders in the backfield, you have to assume that he's, again, like you said, probably not 100%. If it's Shane Ellingworth, you're saying, okay, this is a dude making his first start. Yeah, he came in the clutch last week and played one quarter, but it's a different beast when you're starting from quarter one and know you have to go 4 full quarters. I'm blitzing next week if I'm West Virginia this Saturday, regardless of who is under center for Oklahoma State.
Absolutely, I agree. I'm sitting there, watching the game, and after a few instances, I tweeted out even, and I'm thinking to myself, this electronic whistle thing, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of in my life. Because on the TV, you can barely hear, it's like a dog whistle. You can barely hear it even on the television there. If you heard the announcers in the game were fed up, it was difficult to call, and it's going to get somebody hurt. I mean, Mike Gundy said afterwards he never even heard a whistle, and I completely think that's the full truth. It was that bad. But my question here, and maybe am I digging too deep into this or am I thinking too critically here is the question either way. With this whole electric whistle thing, they say they want to do it to not have spit flying everywhere from the referees and all that. But are the referees not tested too? They don't come in this game testing negative for the coronavirus and they don't have it. What's the big deal? We've already got it flying around with everybody else, and what am I missing?
And like I said, part of the problem, though, you have with the officials is it's not like the NFL. The NFL, most of those guys are now full-time. College refs aren't. College refs are Monday through Thursday working full-time jobs, working, as we famously know, thanks to Kentucky basketball, one men's basketball official has a roofing company and stuff like that. So I think that's the thing we have to keep in mind is it's not like they are under lock and key, so you feel comfortable and confident of their safety precautions because it's not like they're not like the football players. They haven't been necessarily in a controlled environment, so I think that's the closest thing you can take to safety without having to pony up and do something that I said that the NCAA has needed to do for the past 5 years, and that's actually have paid officials.
Yeah.
Full-time officials.
Right. Yeah. Something's going to happen because this just isn't going to cut it. I mean, it's everywhere. But isn't it fair to think that it could possibly get somebody hurt here? I mean, we're seeing full plays go play out that should never happen.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I hadn't even heard of this electronic whistle thing. I didn't even know it was going to be a thing. And I heard, I obviously we had ESPN piped in up top because we didn't have Tom helping giving us the play-by-play as we traditionally would have. And the amount of complaining about this electronic whistle, and I was just like, obviously, you could tell that the players weren't hearing it because there were multiple times where you've got officials flailing their arms around like the wacky waveable inflatable tube men, and the plays are still going on because nobody hears anything. So again, I'm gonna be curious. I want to ask whoever we get tomorrow and Thursday or Wednesday, player wise, if what they thought, because today Gundy said he never heard it once. And he's on the sideline, so I mean, it's not like he's up in the press box like us, so he couldn't. It made sense how he couldn't hear it, but I think eventually that there's a risk of injury because we saw so many times where a play just continued on, even though it was called dead. Yeah, and there was 14,000 people there. It's not like we were drowning out the whistles with noise. It was just brutally bad. And I felt bad for watching the game on ESPN. Sean McDonough is up there in the booth, and he can't stop talking about how bad it is. And I thought, from a broadcaster standpoint, too, calling the game, that would have been brutal. Well, and another thing, I think one of the broadcasters made a good point, or maybe it was someone I heard up in the press box. The bad thing right now with this electronic whistle and you not being able to hear it is what happens when you have a situation where you need to do a review of, let's say, if it's the whistle was blown for forward momentum before a fumble and something like that, but you don't have the whistle to actually hear to trigger. Okay, this is where they officially cut the play. That's going to become an issue as well. I mean, because that's the thing we know when it comes to reviews. If something's going to happen negatively, it's going to happen. And it feels like with these electronic whistles, it's going to set up for disaster when it comes to replays. Yeah. Hey, college football. Let's get back to the whole health and safety of our players thing here. This is part of it. When we come back in hour number 2. The Kansas City Chiefs had a crazy one yesterday. The Dallas Cowboys arguably had an even more crazy game yesterday. A lot going on in the NFL. We'll break it all down in hour number 2 of the afternoon sports drive next.
Feel like I'm gonna puke, cause my taxes are due. Do my best, we'll begin with a 1 or a 2. Been a hell of a ride, but I'm thinking it's time to grow.
Metronome.
Man, I'm up to something. Ooh-dee-la-dee-do, thank you all for coming. I hope you like the show, cause it's on a budget. So ooh-dee-la-dee-do, yeah, come on, here we go, yeah, come on.
Here we go.
So put your best face on, everybody.
It's hour number 2 of the afternoon sports drive. Triple Play Sports Radio Network, and Patrick Wheeler, Jason Elmquist hanging out on Monday. Week 2 of the NFL's in the books, and it was an exciting one, to say the least. How about this, Jason? This is a pretty fun stat for this past week. 7 games in the NFL decided by 1 possession. Actually, that was all yesterday. 7 games yesterday decided by 1 possession after the Bengals and Browns was as well on Thursday. So you had 8 total. That's how close some of these matchups were. And obviously that's where we're going into with a couple of these. We'll lead off with the Dallas Cowboys. Improbable win that they ended up getting here. It resulted as a result of an onside kick. They recovered and were able to get into field goal range. Greg Zuerlein with the 46-yarder as time expired to beat the Atlanta Falcons 40-39. And Jason, I am convinced that the Atlanta Falcons are cursed at this point. I just don't know how else to explain them coughing up leads like this anymore.
Bad coaching.
Honestly,
because that's my thing. Like, I get the whole, don't touch it before it's gone 10 yards specifically on that onside kick. But when I remember at least one Falcons guy where he's the only one near it. Just fall on it.
Right.
Just fall on it.
Right.
And game's over. And instead it's it's like did they not realize that they don't have to wait 10 yards to jump on it.
Yeah.
It's only Dallas that has to wait 10 yards.
That's what I was thinking.
And it was because that's the thing is like even after it gets 10 yards, then you have to jump for it. Well, why not just jump for it when you are the only one who can?
Yeah, it seemed like
that's on the Falcons players and it's, again, potentially coaching.
No, it is. It seemed like at that point they just looked confused. It's like they didn't know. Okay, if you could tell, like going through the head, it was like, can I jump on this now, or if I do, will it result in a penalty, or what do I do here? And at that time, the Cowboys just took advantage. And I'm sure that the kick team, when that happened, going through their heads, they're like, there's no way this is happening right now. The ball still hasn't been touched. The kicker goes out there with no tee, right, puts it straight on the turf, and gives it a nice little dead kick, just enough. But it's just unbelievable. I mean, the fact that this happens to the Falcons again with Dan Quinn. And I mean, look, is it time for Dan Quinn to go? Yeah, it probably is. But I think that if you're going to fire him, let's wait till the season ends probably. I don't know what good it would do at this point. You're 0-2. But at the same time, my goodness, it's just really unbelievable. Look, I'm not going to give a ton of credit to the Dallas Cowboys, okay? Because bottom line, they didn't deserve to win this game. They did not play well enough to win this game. But I do give them credit for mostly shutting down Julio Jones. He had an awful drop that would have helped. I mean, it was one of the worst drops. I've never seen Julio do something that bad. So there was something going on there. But at the same time, offensively, Dak ends up throwing for 450. The thing is, and he looked good, but it's the Atlanta Falcons defense. I didn't think they would have that big of an issue scoring, which eventually, like at halftime, it looked awful. At halftime, it was, we're calling for the head of Dak Prescott. What in the world is going on with this Cowboys offense? They can't score. They can't move down the field. This is just really, really bad. And everybody was thinking the same thing. Here we go again, right, with Dallas. But they managed in the second half to make a comeback. Amari Cooper had an incredible catch. I give Dak credit for getting them, which he didn't have to go a huge distance, but getting them enough field goal range for Greg the Leg to kick it through. But at the same time, you look at what they've done in the first 2 weeks, and I don't know, Jason, is this a situation where Dallas looks back on this and says, hey, we could have been 0-2. We could have been 0-2, but we're 1-1. We build off this. We look at how bad our division is again, and I think this is a possible jumping off point for the Cowboys for the rest of the season if they want to make something happen and take control of how bad that division is. It's right now after what they did on Sunday.
Yeah, because again, crazy as this sounds, you're not going to be facing as weak of defense as you saw Saturday in your division.
Yeah.
Washington's going to be one of the better defenses they've faced. They'll have to face twice. Same with the Giants. Even though they can't get anything going offensively, their defense has at least looked respectable the first 2 weeks. So, the fact that it took them so long to start getting anything going against arguably the worst defense in the National Football League, it has to be alarming. And to flip it to the other side, I just want to say real quick, I feel bad for Matt Ryan, man.
I do too.
When your quarterback is averaging 300 yards per game and so far 3 touchdowns per game on average, and you're 0-2, you're averaging 30 points a game, and you're 0-2. Man, this defense is atrocious.
Hey, at his age too. I mean, he is still putting up numbers. The former MVP. I think he looks good. Now he has weapons, but man, he's using them. He's using them. He's making plays. His throws are crisp. So yeah, I absolutely am with you. If there's a couple of quarterbacks I've felt bad for a long time, and it's Matt Ryan and Matt Stafford, 2 Matts there in the league. But man, Matt Ryan just.
And again, it's not completely his fault, but some of it is because obviously, if you would have scored one more touchdown in the second half, obviously you don't have to worry about losing this one. But do we officially get to take away his moniker of Matty Ice? Because obviously the ice is thawed in his veins.
Jason,
clearly.
No, they scored 39 points. I mean, he shouldn't have had to have scored another touchdown. That's the thing, is that he did. You go out there and you get a offense to score 39 points in a game, you're thrilled. You're like, that'll win us a game every single time. So that's why I feel even worse for Matt Ryan in that situation. And look, if you watch
I would argue not every time do you score 30 points you're going to win. Not just about that, but you go back to some of the Chiefs games back in 2018 when you had Patrick Mahomes putting up numbers. The defense is responsible in this as well.
No, I agree, but I'm saying he was a point away from a 40-point game. And I'm going to have to look up statistics to verify, but I'm going to go ahead and put a lot of money down and say that anyone who puts up 40 to 39 to 40 points has a very high percentage of winning there. So I just feel really bad for Matt Ryan in that situation.
No, you don't have to look up the stat. The stat is this. ESPN tweeted it out yesterday. The Falcons had 39 points with 0 turnovers entering to yesterday's game.
Oh, yeah.
Teams were 440 to 0 when scoring 39 points with 0 turnovers since 1933.
That's just unbelievable. And back when it was 1933, that was when turnovers first started getting tracked in the league.
Yeah.
That's how long ago that was. 440-0. You can't tell me that the Falcons aren't cursed somewhere. I mean, it's just – and okay, let me tell you this. To make matters worse for some Falcons fans, I got to tell you this quick little gambling story that happened with a guy yesterday. There was 7 minutes left in the game. And this guy in Vegas, it was just under 8 minutes. Guy in Vegas, it's 39-30 Cowboys. Goes in, 39-24 Falcons. Goes in and drops $35,000 in an in-game bet on the money line for the Falcons to get the victory. He dropped $35,000 to win $1,050, okay? He goes in there at that point, the Falcons holding a 15-point lead. And we all know what happened all the way down there to the end to make the Cowboys come back and win this game, and he loses $35,000.
Some people just have way too much expendable cash.
That's what I thought.
I mean, if you're spending $35,000 just to try to make $1,000, and that's no big deal that you lost it. I mean that's an example of what's wrong with society, because there's a lot of people that $35,000 is about a year's salary for me. That could make a huge difference for somebody like me or in our tax brackets.
Hey, if he's sitting there, it makes me wonder too. He's thinking at just under 8 minutes left in the game, I got this $35,000 laying around. Let me just go ahead and I feel like gambling a little bit here, toss it down, and no big deal. But I think the confidence level, too, was just through the roof, as it should have been at that time. You put the bet down at that moment, and it's only a $1,000 return. You're like, that'd be a nice, quick little $1,000, spend it on whatever I want there. No. At that point, I would probably never gamble again in my life on sports, as it was that's just brutal. I mean, it adds to the pain of what happened with the Falcons. But I got to ask you this. Like I said earlier, but with what the Cowboys did and the way that they came back, in your mind here, did they deserve to win this game? I mean, be honest.
No, of course not.
Good. Okay.
Again, you when you are only able to score, was it 10 points in the first half against, again, arguably the worst defense in the NFL? You don't deserve to win. I mean, it was a case where, again, I think that's why I think some of the blame has to be shouldered on Atlanta's offense as well, because to me it's kind of similar to Alex Smith's final NFL or playoff game for the Chiefs. It's like, well, yeah, everyone's blaming the defense because defense gave up 20 points in the second half to blow the lead. It's like, yeah, but the offense scored 0. Like, Alex Smith's offense scored 0 in the second half. Matt Ryan's offense scored 10 in the second half after scoring 29 in the first half, so they have to shoulder some of the blame as well. And again, because they were going up against arguably maybe the second worst defense in the NFL with the Dallas Cowboy defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cowboys fans were watching this game. Zeke ends up fumbling at one point, and everything's just the start they got out to. It made me feel, because I know there's a lot of people around here, right, that are Oklahoma State fans and Dallas Cowboys fans. They had to have been having a rough weekend. I mean, to start off football games, it ultimately resulted in their favor with both games. But, man, I think the Cowboys, this is not ideal. This is not ideal. You put up 40 points, you can build off that and say, look, we were able to do that. But the team you just beat, come on now. I mean, there's not a lot of offenses that wouldn't have their day with the Falcons defense, and that's just something that if I'm the Cowboys, and two, you're Dak Prescott, and you're saying you want paid and all this, like, okay, but this has to be extended throughout the rest of the season, okay? These first couple of games is about as bad of a start as the Cowboys could have. Now, it could have been worse because you could have gone 0-2 eventually. But my goodness, the way that it went down, and that's the part that got me. When was the last time? You just don't see an onside kick recovered in the NFL. And then part of it's because of the new rule change where the kicking team doesn't get a running start. You just never see it happen. And I'm thinking to myself, with all that had to have gone right for the Cowboys to be able to get this thing and go and get a W, it just blew my mind, the fact that was able to happen. And I think, too, because part of me, I love to talk down on the Cowboys. They were this close, Jason, to first home game of the year. They still had some fans there, and they were that close to being a disaster.
Yeah, and again, I still think I would still have them probably as my favorite right now in the East, though.
I would too, based off of their other teams that that have played so far. They're just the Giants and the Washington football team, the Eagles. My gosh, they're just terrible.
Yeah. Again, I think Washington, as crazy as this might sound, might be the contender against the Cowboys for me, because that defense obviously it did get exposed when they actually went up against a really good well-oiled machine in Arizona. But yeah, I mean, Eagles, Carson Wentz, that offensive line is horrendous. There's nobody for him to throw it to outside of really Dallas Goedert and at times Zach Ertz when he doesn't look like a 50-year-old man suddenly. And the Giants are done. I mean, they're done. Saquon Barkley, torn ACL, done for the season. Their season is done. So to me, this is just like last year. This is a year where if the Cowboys again fail to make the postseason, at that point you almost have to say, okay, Jerry Jones is ultimately the thing that needs to be replaced.
Yeah, we've said it from the beginning till now. All the way through the offseason, that when the pieces were put in place in Dallas, the excuses can no longer be there for what they were last year. Now, I know there's still plenty of people through 2 games that are not happy with Mike McCarthy. They are not happy with Mike McCarthy. I've heard people say they'd go back to Jason Garrett. Like, you're crazy if you say that, I think. But there are some people that truly believe that. When you look at everything that's in place, the Cowboy, and the fact that the NFC East is just absolutely terrible. Like you said, Saquon goes down. That knocks the team completely out. The Eagles look like they have no sign of hope. The Washington offense is not very good. Their defense is okay, but their offense is really bad. There's no reason. And hey, with the extra playoff spot available this year too, no reason.
Yeah. Well, and think about it this way. That division is very similar to the AFC West. 2 through 4 are bad, horrendous. And the difference, though, is the Chiefs can actually win games. Cowboys can't.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah, it's they have to, and coming in, I think next week, you said they play Washington, right? That's going to be another true test. Like you said, they come in, you give Dak an opportunity here to go up against a stud offense or defensive line that the Washington football team has. I think we're going to see a lot of true colors come out in that ballgame. When we come back, the Kansas City Chiefs, unbelievable game yesterday with an in-division opponent and the Los Angeles Chargers. And then later on, we're going to get to our new segment called Buy or Sell, and we're going to get down to some business with the Chargers, because are they for real? That's the question everybody's asking after yesterday. That's next in the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Levitating off the blacktop.
Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist. So we keep our NFL talk going. Phone lines are open. 405-533-1020. 405-533-1020. You can get in on the action. Kansas City Chiefs yesterday in L.A. First road game of the season to take on the Chargers, who not very long into their pregame warm-ups, they find out that, well, apparently, at least they tell us, that Tyrod Taylor was a no-go. He was not going to be able to play, hurt chest, ribs, and all that. And I thought when I heard afterwards that the Chargers had actually dressed 3 quarterbacks, okay? And that usually doesn't happen unless you know something's going on. So I think they knew, but they apparently also told Justin Herbert not too long before kickoff that he was going to be starting. So I had to think that he was probably like, well, okay, here we go.
Yeah, it was a case where, because I guess Tyrod Taylor had actually been listed as questionable throughout the week, so just kind of a precaution.
Well, yeah, because a lot of people don't look at that, do they? They see questionable and they're like, that just happens to go to some of those players.
Right. Well, and then apparently what happened was, from a story I just saw today, Herbert was told after the coin flip.
Wow.
So, and keep in mind, San Diego got the ball first. So he was literally given about 2 to 3 minutes to say, "Hey, by the way, the game plan we've been working on for the past week, you have to run it now."
Imagine having to wrap your mind around real quick. You're going to be starting at quarterback for the Los Angeles Chargers against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City
Chiefs. Against the defending Super Bowl champions in your debut.
Wow.
Yeah.
Then to me, look, that's what makes his debut even more impressive. Knowing that. I mean, I thought he looked pretty good. There were a couple of mistakes, and one of them ended up sealing the deal. But overall, a far improvement from Tyrod Taylor. And this whole offseason I preached it to you. Said Justin Herbert is going to eventually be the quarterback. He's going to start. I think I even said 2 to 3 weeks in at one point.
Then you will love this quote from Lynn.
Oh, I know.
Today,
I know.
That if he's 100% healthy, Tyrod Taylor's still the starting quarterback.
There is no way he can actually mean that. After what he saw yesterday. And the only argument against that is that they don't want to rush Justin Herbert back into it here as a rookie. Like, come on. I don't understand you. If you think, look, the defense, if they play like they did yesterday, okay, you have to be able to say, we're going to win some games. And we're in a competitive division here where we took the Super Bowl champions to overtime and nearly got it done. We were a yard away from keeping the drive going in overtime. If they have a defense as successful as that, you have to go with Justin Herbert.
Well, and I know I've seen some people argue the fact that interception, which obviously was a game changer, I mean, it shifted the momentum, that Tyrod Taylor would have obviously tucked it and run for the 3 yards that you needed for the first down. But here's the thing. I don't know if it would have been 3rd and 3 with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. Let's be honest.
No, it's true. It's true. And that's something where, Justin Herbert's going to look back. It was a really bad throw, cross his body, when all he had to do, he could have walked for that first down. It was something that he looks back on and goes, okay, rookie mistake, but something I should know better.
And I'm going to say this. I think he starts next week because that's the thing that people need to, if you really truly got to dissect what the head coach said. If he's 100%, Tyrod will play. I don't see within 1 week of him, re-aggravating a rib or whatever it sounded like, of even if they sit him and have him do no practice, which is going to hurt you because you need him to prepare for your next opponent. I just don't see how he's going to be 100% by next Sunday and having helped implement the offense as well.
Yeah, no, and it's going to give Justin Herbert another opportunity. I fully believe he'll be back in there too. I said it yesterday after what he did in that game. I said he just took Tyrod's job. Like, there's no way in anyone's mind, and then it'd be one thing if the Chargers weren't a competitive ball club, but they are. I know that they had some issues here and there, but that defense,
defense is good.
That defense is good. It's for real. If they play like they did yesterday, the rest of the season, they have weapons on. Look, Austin Eckler's the real deal. They have that backup running back that's pretty good. Keenan Allen's a stud receiver, and Hunter Henry's a great tight end. They have the weapons.
You know Bosa's good when he was able to absolutely embarrass the best right tackle in NFL.
You know that Bosa...
On that sack,
yes.
On that sack, Mitchell Schwartz got absolutely just bull rushed, embarrassed.
Oh, it was all good.
And that shows how good that front line is. And again, the Chiefs' offensive line was... I kept texting people yesterday. I felt like I was watching the OSU game from Saturday with how bad the offensive line play was from the Chiefs. But it was also, they were also going up against one of the best front lines. Honestly, probably two of the best offensive or defensive lines they faced have been two of the past three, and they both are anchored by Bosa's.
Oh, yeah, and one of them, unfortunately, is out for the rest of the year. But Joey Bosa, yeah, and with Melvin Ingram, we knew, but I didn't think anyone knew it was going to be as deadly a combination as it was yesterday. There was a time where I was thinking, just fire Mitchell Schwartz mid-game. And that's crazy because he's a beast. He's the best at his position, but it wasn't just and that sack looked worse in that rush, but it was all game. That Bosa was getting to Patrick Mahomes. On the other side, Melvin Ingram. You go down the list of guys that were getting to the quarterback. And it's just unbelievable. But the thing that is going to get everybody is that when you bring the talent that the defense did with LA yesterday, and still you have one of, and I truly believe this, Jason, possibly the only quarterback that's able to come back from double-digit deficits like Patrick. I mean, he is the only guy that is unwavered in this situation. And that there's a lot of good quarterbacks in the league. And you could tell there were times where he was visibly frustrated. And the Kansas City Chiefs looked human yesterday. But at the same time, there was always this confidence that you can still tell. It's been there since Patrick Mahomes has been in the league. And he's continuing to make plays. We saw it on the 3rd and 20 play, right? It's 3rd and 20. We just got backed up with a penalty. It's looking bad here. And Mahomes, what does he do? Everyone's covered up, and he runs for 21 yards. It reminded me last year of the AFC Championship game against Tennessee. It was that good. It was a fantastic run. He's making plays. And I just think that, and we haven't even talked about his 60-yard bomb to Tyreek. But it's crazy to think, and I think Chiefs fans can feel this more than anybody. Finally understanding here again that no matter the deficit, no matter how ugly the Chiefs look in a game, you just never feel like you're out of it at any point because of who's at quarterback.
Yeah, and I can't find it right now, but I saw a infographic, I think from one of the ESPN Twitter accounts, that Mahomes, there's only two other NFL quarterbacks who have had at least five straight games of coming back from 10 and winning 10 when down 10 by double digits.
Yeah.
One of those is Joe Montana. The other one was like Steve Rutkowski back in the 80s. And then Mahomes actually now has the most in a row with 6. He's won 6 games in a row now in which his team trailed by double digits at some point in the game.
That's truly unbelievable.
No other quarterback in NFL history has done that.
Yeah, that's truly unbelievable at his age, what he's been able to do in that situation. And it just provides, and I think it's a team thing. The team, we saw it last year in the Super Bowl, right? I'll never forget the audio clip from the sideline of Frank Clark and Chris Jones saying, we got Pat Mahomes at quarterback, we're not worried. And that's what they believe all the way through. And then we saw this yesterday. There was some injuries. Frank Clark was sick. You know, there was times where you didn't know who was going to make a play on the defensive side of the ball, and I think L'Jarius Sneed obviously had the big time interception. Tyrann Mathieu played great, but when you look at it from the offensive standpoint here again, at least for the Chargers, they get the ball, and I'm wondering if this happened to you too, Jason. We get to overtime, we get to the coin flip, the Chargers win the coin flip, okay, and I couldn't help but get those bad thoughts of what happened with the Patriots.
AFC Championship game, yeah.
And I know that it was the Patriots and it was Tom Brady in 2018, but it's still, I was like, we had this issue ever since of the coin flip going the wrong way and Patrick Mahomes possibly not touching the football.
Do you agree with Romo's questioning of if they should have gone for 4th down?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. The 4th and 1. And he said immediately, Tony Romo said, go for it. You got to go for it. And I thought initially, because there's 2 things I thought. One, I could see where you would go for it because you do need 1 yard. You can put in a power formation. You can overload it. And I'm sure with Austin Eckler or even with Justin Herbert, you could probably get 1 yard. But at the same time, you were so deep in your own territory. If you managed to not do that, it would have been game over. So if I was Anthony Lynn at that point, I think if I'm going against the Chiefs, I'm at home, I weigh my option of do I go for a yard or give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes in overtime. I'm probably going to go for it. I'm probably going to go for it and try to extend the drive. What would you do in that situation?
I probably would have gone for it as well, because the fact of the matter is, we saw exactly what happened. You gave the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't matter if you give it to him at your own 40 or at his 20. He's going to be able to move the ball, and that's the thing. I get the whole argument of you want your best aspect to be out on the field to try to win it for you, and their best was their defense. But their defense was starting to get shredded late in that game. Keep in mind, you were outscored 11-3 in the final quarter.
Yeah.
So that's my thinking was I would have gone for it because you don't want to, because honestly I would go for it, and then if I don't score, we wind out we wind out the clock. We finish it with a tie, and we don't have a loss in the loss column within our division.
Yeah, no, that's...
For me, I know the argument's going to be, well, their defense was holding throughout the game, was doing well, but it wasn't that late in the game. Late in the game, it was starting to get worn down.
Yeah, and in that situation, their front was exhausted. I mean, you could tell. And that includes Joey Bosa and everybody else. You could tell they had played as hard as possible, and they were being asked to basically play another quarter of NFL football, and it was tough at that point. So, I think you kind of roll the dice there. You go for it, because even if you don't get it and you get stuffed there from a yard out, you do say, at least I gave us a shot. At least I gave us a shot. And I say this too, I've hated the overtime rules forever in the NFL. I don't like it. I think that if anything, you should have, if they put it down to 10 minutes, you should have to play out that quarter. I've always said that. If you're going to do 10 minutes, play out the quarter. But anyway, so that didn't have anything to do with it. But at that time, I'm thinking, man, if they had that option, it would have been different. However, when you come down to the final play of what took place in that ball game, Harrison Butker proved that he is in the argument for the best kicker in the league.
And he did so 3 times.
3 times. 3 times. He went in there yesterday in those clutch moments and was able to make a 58-yard field goal twice. Only one of them counted, but it was really unbelievable what he did. After the game, here's what Pete Sweeney, who reports with the Chiefs, said. Harrison Butker told him after the game. He said, one, he got angrier each of those kicks at the end of the game. He got angrier each time. He said, and he hit from 67 yards before the game in pregame, and he hit from 70 yards at halftime. So 58 meant in his words.
It was a chip shot.
Yeah, it meant in his words he could, quote, swing easy.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, a kicker in that situation, and that's the thing I thought of too, that people that go down and they look at every position on the Chiefs offense and they go, okay, arguably best tight end, arguably top 2, top 3 receiver, best quarterback, best, we mentioned on the defense, obviously, at those positions, offensive line, and then you look at your kicker and say, that too? Really? I mean, he's able to step up in that position and be as consistent as he was. Ice in Harrison Butker's veins. That was awesome to see.
Yeah, ultimately makes 2 58-yard field goals in the same game, which
unbelievable.
tied the franchise record for longest field goal, which is crazy in my mind to think.
And they had room too. I mean, it was that could have been 63, 65 yards.
Oh yeah, and that's what I can understand him making the argument of getting frustrated, because the first field goal you make was from 53, but an offensive lineman, the ones that have been atrocious all day, twitches before the snap, so you move it back 5, and then obviously they try to ice it, and then that pisses him off, and he bangs that one through. And then I don't know if you've seen the side-by-side imagery.
I have, yep.
of that third one.
Yep.
Where as soon as he kicks it, he just turns around, arms there, like it's good.
Yeah, he knew.
We're good, guys.
It was automatic. He was automatic, and then when it got moved back on the penalty, I thought to myself, okay, the Chiefs gave themselves such an opportunity there that looked like that was going to be for sure good to go for Harrison Butker. You push him back 5 yards, and while you're still confident, you're like, okay, but the way that happened, which there were plenty of penalties on the offensive line for the Chiefs, but another one right there, he just barely flinches. They catch it, 5 more yards. Now is that going to affect Harrison Butker's rhythm, his timing? And it didn't. So it was really fantastic to see.
Before we finish up Chiefs talk, I've got to bring it up. I didn't watch any of the games last Sunday. And again, the first Chiefs game had fans in the stands. The fake crowd noise has to go. It is so bad.
Agree. It was terrible.
I actually, by middle of the first quarter, I actually muted the rest of the game. I was actually getting a headache from the crowd noise because it was so, it was just incessant. It was nonstop. And I'm like, that's not how it is in a real setting.
No, it's not realistic. Not in LA. And I'll tell you this too. If you haven't seen it, you need to go back and watch the video of the then the audio of the kick for Harrison Butker. They're playing the fake noise, and there's like this deathly scream behind all this noise. I mean, it was I don't know, it sounded like an animal, and you had to go back and listen to it. At that point, I was like, what is going on? But yeah, that's something that I desperately miss with real fans.
Yeah, I will give credit, though. At least the Philadelphia Eagles are using it properly.
Unbelievable.
Because the fact that they actually booed Carson Wentz twice is so spot on.
Fox Sports, in an empty stadium, put on the boos for Carson Wentz being so bad at home. But it's so realistic. That's what Eagles fans would do. And I thought that was too good. I couldn't believe it at that time. The guy running the boo button was like, perfect opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
And he took it. How about this, too, with the Chiefs? 98% of betting tickets were on Kansas City to cover -8. 98%.
Jeez.
Uh-oh on that one. Vegas always
made a lot
knows.
of money.
Yeah, it was a good day for the books. On that one. That was a huge number that obviously stood out there, but really an unbelievable game. I think obviously to wrap it up too, Jason, the Chiefs, they have a ton to work on here because of their opponent in week 3. Now they get an extra day to do it, but you've got the Ravens who have cruised in their first 2 games in prime time next Monday night. It's in Baltimore, I believe, too. Is that correct off the top of your head? I want to say it's in Baltimore.
I think it is.
Yeah, and so with all that being played into it, I'm telling you this, they can't play the way that they played Sunday against Baltimore and expect to win.
Oh, no. And again, one extra game or one extra day to prepare probably isn't going to make a big difference considering they had 3 extra days to prepare for this one, and obviously it didn't work out.
Unless they utilize it better. That's it. Yeah. Because part of it, and you know the Chiefs' preparation is excellent, but you also know some of these guys, they had to have been thinking too, it's the Chargers, right? I mean, and then the past record speaks for itself against LA. They've never really had that much trouble, and then in the past 10 games at least. So, but this is going to be a much different matchup. Could very well be the regular season matchup of the year next Monday night. When we come back, we'll get to our buy or sell in the NFL. A couple of things going on yesterday that are in question. We're going to bring that up to round out the show on the afternoon sports drive next. Afternoon Sports Drive, wrapping it up here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist. Get to our buy or sell segment here in the NFL. Jason, as we were just talking about with Kansas City, do you buy or sell the Los Angeles Chargers after that performance they put up yesterday?
As a playoff team?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
I think, again, with that extra playoff spot, we now know that Drew Lock's going to be out possibly up to 5 weeks. I'll go with it. Again, they've got a great defense. And it looks like Justin Herbert's going to be a quarterback that can actually win them games instead of be responsible for some losses like a Tyrod Taylor, I think is. I think they have the ability to be a playoff team right now.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that too. They looked legit yesterday, and then if Justin Herbert is able to work on some of those rookie mistakes, which I'm giving him a pass for, because it was, and the fact that, and I say this too, the fact that we find out how late he figured out he was going to be in that position and still did what he did. He's mobile too, and his throws look good for the most part. I think his awareness needs to be a little better, but other than that, I think he's the driving engine with this defense to make them a legitimate playoff team too, and definitely a threat to some other teams when you look at the schedule they have coming up. A beatable Carolina Panthers next week. Then they travel to the Bucks, the Saints back-to-back. That's going to be a little bump in the road there, but then it gets a little easier. Jets, Dolphins, and then Jaguars after that. So there's definitely a lot of winnable games on the schedule for LA this year. Buy or sell, we're 2 weeks in here. Tom Brady gets his first win with the Bucks yesterday, 1-1 on the season. Buy or sell Tom Brady so far?
I am buying him as a game manager, yes. Because when you look at it and see that they finally, Bruce Arians finally listened into your show and said that, hey, run that guy Leonard Fournette, he's kind of good.
Shocking that worked.
And they actually did that? Yeah. I'm buying the Bucks because they have the skill players around him. I'm buying Brady as essentially your Peyton Manning when they won the Super Bowl, where he didn't do anything. Like that's what it feels like Tom Brady is right now.
Yeah, it was fantastic to see Leonard Fournette. I mean, he looked as good as ever and deserved, to me at that point, to be your starter and handle a heavy workload. Tom Brady, there were passes early on that looked pretty crisp. There was a couple of obviously dumb mistakes again. And there were a couple of bad drops by his receivers. He was without Chris Godwin and still got the victory. Again, it was against Carolina. So you take as much into that as one. But I think Tom Brady, he's still trying. This is the thing. Trying to make sure everybody understands that, look, I'm still trying to get to know everybody on this team and gel and all that. And I think that plays a little bit into it, but not so much so that you're feeling like you're running out of time and you don't have enough chemistry with these guys. Like, it's not going to take that long, I don't think. So I guess I'll buy Tom Brady for now, cautiously, I'll say, as a good quarterback, again, still in the NFL. The Jacksonville Jaguars, 1-1 on the season. They win in week 1 over the Colts, and they lose by 3 to the Tennessee Titans in a very good matchup on Sunday. The Jags 1-1, Jason, not necessarily a playoff team here, but do you buy them as a legitimate team this year?
I think I still need to see more from them. I don't know. I mean, Robinson, the running back, has looked good so far.
Yeah, he has.
Whether that's sustainable. Again, I pointed out last year, Gardner Minshew looked good to start off the season and then just fizzled out. So I also want to see if he can maintain this as well. So I don't buy them right now. Their trajectory leads me towards thinking they might be, but as of now, I'd have to say no.
Yeah, I want to see some more tougher opponents here. The Titans are obviously no cakewalk, and there were a couple of times, especially late in that game, Gardner Minshew, his throws looked really, really good. And he was saying, hey, yeah, I can prove I'm still an NFL quarterback caliber type guy, and looked pretty good. Robinson has played well at the rookie spot in the running back position, but I just don't buy the rest of that defense that they're having trouble with as well. So I'm going to probably sell them at the moment here. How about Cam Newton? Cam Newton 1-1 on the season, but last night against the Seahawks came down to the final play. He was stuffed on the goal line, but he looked really good. It was a game where he was forced to throw the ball a lot more, even though he did score twice on the ground again. But at the same time, he was making big-time throws, and I buy into it because of the receivers that are available to him. He got N'Keal Harry more involved. Best game N'Keal Harry's had. A new receiving yardage record set for Julian Edelman last night. I mean, he had a lot of plays he was able to make through the air with his feet. He looked as healthy as ever. And even that defense that lost as many guys that opted out as they did, the Patriots look pretty good. I'm buying Cam Newton, and I'm not just saying buy. I'm saying take all my money to Cam Newton right now.
I'm not buying or selling on this one. I'm holding pat right now because I want to know if this is just a product, if we're finding out that Seattle's defense actually is really bad. Because keep in mind, Seattle's defense gave up a lot of points against Atlanta in week 1 as well. And again, I'll admit it's an Atlanta offense that obviously can put up points. They did it against a terrible Dallas team as well. But I'm holding out because if it's just a simple case where they went up against a defense that's now probably maybe overrated, I don't know if that's a good gauge for me right now. So I'm holding on Cam. But if I'm wanting to see if if they come out and they, and Seattle shuts down somebody next week, I'm not sure who they have, but if they shut out a legitimate team, shut them down, then I might start leaning a little bit more towards buying Cam.
The other reason I do buy Cam as well is not just what he was able to do last night, but the way he was able to do it. And that's back to the passing game. They were decisive throws. They were throws that took him standing tall in the pocket and making quick decisions, but also being extremely accurate and sharp on some of those throws. So I think he's there. And that was the question I had after week 1 was he looked great on the ground, but I want to see, is that shoulder okay? Is he throwing the ball well? And he really proved that to me last night against, it's a depleted, and last night didn't help. The Seahawks, more injuries to that secondary in last night's ball game, but it came down again to the wire. I got to ask you this too, Jason, we'll finish it on this, and we didn't really break down this game much, but the end of that ball game, and this had already happened multiple times, Cam from short yardage next to the goal line is able to run it in on his own. But the final play of the game, you need 2 yards. They load up, they get everybody on the line, they stack it all up, and you know what's going to happen with Cam Newton. Again, the Seahawks stuff him before he can get in and win that ball game from a couple yards out. I thought initially that I really would have liked to see an RPO in that situation because he was throwing the ball so well, and it probably would have taken the Seahawks, got him off guard like it did earlier in the game. But is it right to you to see the Pats in that situation say, game on the line, let's load it up and let's give it to Cam and see if he can get it done from 2 yards out?
Well, and I wonder how much of the Super Bowl lingered in the mind of Belichick and the Patriots of, you know what, the argument was that Seattle should have run the ball in that situation, and maybe that's something that they were thinking through when they decided to call up a run.
I think if they hadn't, if they had attempted to throw or whatever, then everyone we'd be sitting here talking, why didn't you run it with Cam?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
So it'd be that situation, but I think there probably needed to be a little bit more creativity. It's one of those things, too, where I wouldn't mind even seeing, like I said, with an RPO situation, a fullback more into the mix a little bit instead of just everybody up on the line. So there's things you could have mixed up, but they were that close. The fact that they were hanging, and that matchup's always been good. I mean, Patriots-Seahawks has always been one of the better matchups every single when they play. They should play every single season. It's that good. But it was a fun one, and the Seahawks just able to escape with that victory. It's going to do it for us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. We'll be back here tomorrow and get talking into some more NFL. We'll break down some more games and much more tomorrow. Packed week coming up, and we'll prepare, obviously, for West Virginia that will be in town to play OSU football on Saturday. Of course, we'll have the coverage here on Triple Play Sports Radio Network starting at 9:30 with Jason Elmquist and myself. This has been the Afternoon Sports Drive. That's Jason Elmquist. I'm Patrick Wheeler. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Monday.